So you heard me mention Dynamesh, so let's talk a little bit about that. Again, if I go into, I hit the comma key or open up the lightbox and I tap on these, you're going to see it's called Dynamesh Sphere. So let's talk about the difference between subdividing and dynameshing. And you know what, in order to demonstrate that a little more clearly, I'm going to take a step back and we'll talk about primitives. So let's talk about primitives. I lied. Comma key. So this is a cool object. I don't dislike it, but I want to start something new. So what I'm going to do is go over here and click on my tool, and you're going to see it's going to open up a list of 3D meshes I can use. And I'm going to start with what's called a Z primitive. So let's choose a cube 3D. So I'm going to tap this cube 3D, and it didn't delete the vase let's call it the vase I was working on. It's still there. So if I click it, it's going to pop right back, but I can switch to this cube 3D now. Now, it's not sculptable. In fact, if I try and sculpt on it, it's going to yell at me. It's going to say, if you want to sculpt on this thing, right now it's a 3D primitive. It needs to be converted to a polymesh 3D. And in order to do that, you're going to click the Make Polymesh 3D button, which is right here. I don't want to click that yet. I don't want to sculpt on it yet. It's a primitive. And what that means is, because it's primitive, I can initialize it. So if you have a primitive selected and you look down here, and again, we're in the tool menu, all the way down here at the bottom, you're going to see an initialize menu. These are settings that you can use to initialize or kind of set up your ZBrush primitive. In order to see some of these things changing, I'm going to want to turn on my polyframe menu right here. That's Shift F, or you can just turn that on. And let's talk a little bit about polyframe. Of course, you can hold down Control and learn all about it. But since I'm here, you're going to see a line here and a fill here. You can go ahead and turn these off and on. Because this isn't a Make Polymesh 3D, it doesn't seem to be updating that, but I'll go ahead and demonstrate these in a bit. But the important thing is it's basically turning on your wireframe for your object here. So these lines do exist. You just can't really see them when it's just in kind of what we would call shaded mode. But if we turn those on, you're going to see, oh, we have a bunch of lines here. Now, of course, these lines represent something very specific, and those are basically edges. So for each 3D object in your scene, you're going to have vertices. So if I kind of roll over these, you're going to see it's going to snap to those corners. Each one of those is called a vertex, and connecting two vertices is an edge. That's a different component. And then surrounding any poly face are edges, and those, those can be triangles or those could be n-gons depending on the program you're in. ZBrush doesn't usually work with n-gons, so it's usually a triangle or a quad, a four-sided face. So you've got a face, which is this broad surface here, surrounded by four edges, connected by four vertices. Now, if we want to change how many lines are on this object, you can go over here to your H divide and your V divide. That's your horizontal and your vertical divide. So you can just click and drag and it'll kind of make more or less. If you let go and you can type in 8, enter, you can give it 8 or 16, however many you want. You can go vertically and you can make them more or less that way. Let's drop that down to 4, that's fine. And once you've initialized this, and there's other cool ones in here, you can twist your object around. You can do X or, oops, let's go ahead and make that twist 0 here. You can do X size, Y size, Z size to kind of size your object accordingly. You can crank up your sides, and that actually turns it into a cool cylinder. And always remember, you have a cylinder available to you as a base mesh, but you can also do it in here if you'd like. But we'll go ahead and keep it 4 for now. We'll crank up our H divides again, and our V divides are okay. So once you're happy with your primitive and you want to sculpt on it, because again, if you try and sculpt on it, it's going to yell at you. Once you're happy with how you set it up, go ahead and hit Make Polymesh 3D and just click that, and you're going to see it change color. And it also, you're going to notice our initialize menu disappeared. That's because we can no longer initialize this object. It's not a primitive. It is now sculptable. So now when I drag on the mesh, it doesn't yell at me. And let's change back to our standard brush here. It doesn't yell at me. It just lets me sculpt on it.